You are the CEO of a large multinational company. Your company has $170 billion in revenue. It serves 1.2 billion customers, and it employs almost 1 million people. But it's not all good news for you. In the past few decades, your company has lost revenue and market share at pretty alarming rates. Your home markets of North America and Europe are the ones that have been hit the hardest, offset only by growth in emerging markets like Latin America and Africa. But that's not going to be good enough. You're the CEO of this business. What are you going to do? My name is Sarah Joyce, and the organization that I just described to you is the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is a company that I've always been interested in. I grew up in a Catholic household. I went to a Catholic school. I even worked as an altar server, helping the priest with Mass on Sundays. I did my grade 10 career speech about how women should be priests, thinking that I was going to become one. Then my life went in a bit of a different direction. I became a management consultant. But it was only in working in consulting for a few years in marketing strategy that I became interested in the church in a new way. I was helping clients with declining revenue and declining market share problems, and I started wondering, what if I took the same common approach that I was using on my clients and applied it in an uncommon place, the Catholic Church? What if I was the CEO of the church? What would I do? But I get it. The Catholic Church is my thing. It definitely might not be yours. On one hand, you might not be religious. You might not be Catholic. You're wondering why you should care about the church. I get it. On the other hand, maybe you're really religious, really Catholic. You think the church is sacred, not something to be turned around or fixed. I get that too. But the beauty of this exercise to me is that it actually doesn't matter where you stand on the issue. It's not really about religion at all. Rather, it's about taking something that has typically not been thought of with the consumer marketing lens and just seeing what happens if we start to think of it this way. And so I invite you to suspend disbelief and indulge with me in this exercise of you and I as Pope and CEO. And of course, it's been a bit of a bumpy ride in getting to the top of the church. When I first started thinking about this topic back in November, Pope Benedict was firmly in place. When I first delivered it in March, there was no Pope. We had the first resignation of the Pope in over 700 years. And as I stand here today, we have Pope Francis, the first Pope from an emerging market, and hopefully signal of positive change that is to come. There was a lot of really great press at the time when this was all happening. My personal favorite from CBS News. Let's let that be our inspiration for today. So if we were the CEOs of the church, the first thing that we would do is define the problem. And in this case, define the problem as greater net losses of existing customers in traditional markets than any other major faith. And while that may sound like an unnecessary mouthful, there's a reason why I say it like that. This is a global, complex problem. Like any good CEO, we're going to focus down and tackle it one issue at a time, starting here in the US. It's our home market. It also happens to be the one we have the best data on. And so step 2, we scan the industry. And we say, how are our competitors doing? Who's winning in this market and why? And when we grab data on religious affiliation in the US over the past few decades, we can see that the Catholic affiliation has been relatively flat, hovering around 25% of the population. While that might not seem like enough of cause for change, what this line hides is how the population base has changed within that. We've lost a lot of existing customers, and we're benefiting here from immigration, from Latin America, primarily from Mexico. So what about the Protestants? When we grab the data on them, we see that they actually have it worse than we do. They were at 60% of the population a few decades ago, and they're just about at 50 today. So then what about this one? Any ideas to the one religion that's been eating our lunch? I think I heard it in there. The religion that's been winning is those who are unaffiliated with religion, or the nuns, as I will call them. These nuns, they may have been raised in religion, but they've become unaffiliated with what they were raised in without rejoining with another faith. And the next logical question is, who are these people? And it turns out, when we ask ourselves this, we need to look no further than this room. This is the millennial generation, 18 to 29. We have more choice, more freedom of expression. We don't need to do what our parents did anymore. And so, as CEOs of the church, doesn't this seem like a logical intervention point to re-engage with our millennial Catholics before they become nuns? And so we define our target customer as the millennial Catholics, 18 to 29 years old, who were raised Catholic but are currently not as engaged as they used to be or as we would like them to be. And if you're with me so far, then here comes the fun part. What are we going to do about it? I like to think about customer engagement in 3 ways. We need to do something to get them into the door. We then need to do something with them while they're here. And we need to do something that keeps them coming back. So let's go through each of these. To get them in the door, this is the millennials we're talking about, you might think to turn to social media. Well, I find it extremely fascinating that the Pope has a Twitter account with 2.4 million followers, that celebrities and athletes who are the key influencers for this demographic are constantly tweeting, giving thanks and praise and appreciation to God. Even Jesus has his own Twitter account. Twitter actually did a study last year and found that some of the most popular tweets, in terms of the number of tweets and retweets, were those that had an inspiring message about God. Talk about meeting your customers where they are. And if social media is not enough, maybe another idea to get them in could be direct outreach. As some of you in the room know, there's a very famous Target campaign where they used the data that they have to predict when someone might be pregnant. And then they sent targeted mailings and coupons to those expectant mothers on baby products. Well, what if we used the data that we had on our demographic to predict when they might be going through major life events? When they graduate college, move to a new city, start a new job. Just like the expectant mothers were more receptive to Target in those moments, wouldn't our demographic be more receptive to us? So we've got them in the door. Now what are we going to do with them? And I actually don't think there's much you can do with the Mass. The sacraments, the homily, the traditions, everything needs to remain the same. The church isn't going to go for budging on much of that. But I do think there's an opportunity to innovate the homily. For those of you who don't know, the homily is the 5 to 10, sometimes 15, 20, 30 minutes that the priest has to connect the fundamental teachings of the church to today's modern world. Some priests are really good at this today. The problem is, it's inconsistent. I can't help but think back to my family. We would pile into the minivan and we would drive for 25 minutes past our local parish to this one particular parish to see this one particular priest, Father Joe. Father Joe was 6 feet tall. He had long, dark hair and a big, booming voice. He was funny and charismatic. When he spoke, he walked right up into the pews and he interacted with his audience. He made you laugh, he made you cry, he made you laugh because you were crying, and that was kind of weird. But when you left feeling inspired and uplifted and feeling everything that I would want my congregation to feel if I were the CEO. So how do we hold all priests up to the Father Joe standard? I've come to realize that we can't. Priests are called to serve. They're not recruited for their public speaking abilities, but there might be an opportunity to help them out. What about hiring professional speakers to come in every once in a while? What about hiring speechwriters and communication coaches? And damn it, when we find a message that works, why not videotape it so we can share it across the network? Don't make me drive to Father Joe. Bring Father Joe to me. And so that brings me to my final point. How are we going to keep them? As CEOs of the church, we don't want our relationship with our congregation to end when Mass ends. We want to give them something to take with them into the week. Luckily, today, we have mobile phones, something that is always with our target demographic. So what if we used a mobile app to allow us to share content with them, allow them to share content with one another? We could have a prayer wall. We could create invites, track rides, attendance. We could even accept online donations. Imagine. There are apps like this that exist. It's estimated that 10,000 parishes are already using them. What is the Catholic Church waiting for? Why not become the next one? So hopefully by now, you have seen that an uncommon approach, or a common approach rather, can work in even the most uncommon place. If I were the CEO of the church, I would go after the millennial generation. I would use social media and direct outreach to bring them in. I'd innovate the homily for them once they're there, and I would use a mobile app to keep them coming back. My next steps are pretty clear. I'm going to try to get this onto Pope Francis's desk. But what about all of you? I haven't forgotten about you. What problem are you facing? What's going on in your industry? Who are your customers? And how are you going to optimize the experience for them? You are the CEO. Thank you.